Pip lived in the marshes of Kent with his cruel sister and her kind husband, Joe, who was a blacksmith. Her sister would often boast about the trouble she went through to raise Pip. On a bitterly cold Christmas Eve, when a cold mist covered the graveyard, the young Pip visited his parents' tombstones. Suddenly, a terrifying figure sprang up from behind a tombstone. He seized Pip and ordered him to bring food and a file for his leg irons. Trembling, Pip obeyed, stealing from his sister's pantry and file from his brother-in-law Joe's shop. Soon that terrifying man was caught by soldiers, as he was an escaped convict named Abel Magwitch. Though relieved, Pip remained haunted by the encounter. Some time later, Pip's pompous uncle Pumbletuke arranged for him to visit Satis house, the decaying mansion of the wealthy but eccentric Miss Havisham. Once a beautiful woman, Miss Havisham had been abandoned on her wedding day and had never recovered. She still wore her faded, tattered wedding dress, and all the clocks in her house remained frozen at the exact moment of her betrayal. Her grand banquet table was still set for a wedding feast, but now, it was covered in cobwebs and dust. At Satis house, Pip met Estella, Miss Havisham's adopted daughter, who was raised to break hearts of men as a revenge for her betrayal by Miss Havisham. She was stunningly beautiful but treated Pip with disdain for his low status. Yet, despite her cruelty, Pip fell hopelessly in love with her. He began to dream of becoming a gentleman, believing that if he were wealthy and refined, he might be worthy of her love. He even imagined that Miss Havisham intended to help him rise in status and arrange for him to marry Estella. However, his hopes were crushed when, after months of visiting Satis house, Miss Havisham sent him away, instructing Joe to take him on as an apprentice blacksmith. Devastated, Pip resigned himself to his fate and started to work with Joe, but his heart remained restless.
At the forge, Pip worked under Joe's gruff and resentful worker, Orlick. The man harbored a deep hatred for Pip and attacked Pip's sister, Mrs. Joe, leaving her disabled. Many suspected Orlick, though no proof was found. After Mrs. Joe was attacked and became an invalid, Biddy, a simple and kind-hearted girl who had attended the village school with Pip, moved into Pip's home to care for his invalid sister. Biddy became a close confidant to Pip, offering him advice and support, particularly as he navigated his feelings for Estella and his aspirations to become a gentleman. Years passed, then one day everything changed. A lawyer named Jaggers appeared with strange news. A secret benefactor had given Pip a large fortune, and Pip must go to London immediately and begin his education as a gentleman. Convinced that Miss Havisham was behind his good fortune and that she intended him to marry Estella, Pip eagerly left for London, abandoning his old life and distancing himself from Joe. In London, Pip was sent to live with Herbert Pocket, the son of Matthew Pocket. Matthew Pocket was Miss Havisham's cousin and one of her potential heirs. Herbert was a kind and cheerful young man who became Pip's closest friend. Under Herbert's guidance, Pip learned the ways of a gentleman. However, he also fell into extravagant spending, accumulating debt while indulging in the luxuries of city life. All the while, he remained fixated on Estella, hoping that Estella would love him one day, but she remained as distant as ever. Sometime later, Pip received Biddy's letter conveying the news of his sister's death. Pip immediately returned to his village to attend the funeral and reflected on his childhood, and how much he had drifted from Joe and Biddy. Estella married Bentley Drummie, largely due to Miss Havisham's manipulations. The marriage was not a happy one, as Drummie mistreated her.
One stormy night, Pip heard heavy footsteps outside his apartment in London. A rough-looking old man arrived unannounced, dripping wet from the rain. At first, Pip did not recognize him, but soon, he realized it was Abel Magwitch, the escaped convict he had helped as a child. Magwitch then revealed the truth. He had been Pip's secret benefactor all along, not Miss Havisham. He had made a fortune in Australia by working tirelessly for Pip and sent that money to Jaggers to fund Pip's transformation into a gentleman. This revelation shattered Pip's long-held belief that Miss Havisham had been preparing him for Estella. At first, Pip felt ashamed that his wealth had come from a criminal. But as he learned Magwitch's story, his feelings changed. Pip now came to see the old convict not as a criminal, but as a deeply loyal and kind-hearted man. Magwitch, however, got deeply emotional, seeing Pip as a gentleman. He had risked his life to return to England just to see him. This revelation completely changed Pip's perspective, setting the stage for his journey of redemption and loyalty towards Magwitch.
Magwitch revealed that he had been cruelly exploited by Compeyson, the same man who had jilted Miss Havisham at wedding altar years ago. Pip visited Satis house to talk to Miss Havisham to secure financial support for setting up a business for Herbert Pocket. Pip had no selfish motive. This act reflects the growth of his character. Miss Havisham, filled with regret, realized that in raising Estella to be heartless, she had condemned her to an empty life. Miss Havisham was deeply remorseful about the pain she had caused by using Estella to exact revenge on men. She begged Pip for forgiveness, but before she could make amends, a tragic accident occurred. Her tattered wedding dress caught fire as she was near the fireplace. Pip rushed to save her, but she succumbed to her injuries a few days later, dying in her ruined mansion. Magwitch wanted to escape from England to avoid being caught and executed after returning illegally from exile. He had been banished to Australia for life, and returning to England was a capital offence as he had secretly come to England to see Pip.
Pip and Herbert, desperate to help Magwitch, plan to escape, but the sinister Compeyson, Miss Havisham's former fiancé, alerted the authorities. In a river chase, Compeyson drowned, and Magwitch was fatally wounded and imprisoned. Before dying, he found solace in Pip's words, "Your daughter is alive, she is Estella." Magwitch passed away, at peace knowing his child had survived. Soon after that, Pip lost his fortune, leaving him penniless. He fell gravely ill, but Joe, ever faithful, nursed him back to health. After recovering from a serious illness, Pip returned to his village to express his gratitude to Joe for nursing him and to propose to Biddy. However, to his surprise, he discovered that Joe and Biddy had just been married. Though initially taken aback, Pip accepted their union with grace and sincerity. Following this, he accepted a position with Herbert's firm and departed for Egypt, where he worked diligently for 11 years, growing wiser and more mature. After spending 11 years in Egypt, Pip returned to England, now a mature and humbled man.
He visited Joe and Biddy, who were happily married and had 2 children, including a son named Pip who had a striking resemblance with Pip. Their peaceful domestic life filled Pip with quiet contentment. Later, Pip walked through the ruins of Satis house, now demolished, reflecting on the memories and mistakes of the past. There, he unexpectedly met Estella. She, too, had changed, softened by hardship and sorrow. Her cruel husband, Bentley Drummy, had died, and she now spoke with grace and humility. The two talked gently, with understanding and forgiveness passing between them. As they walked away together, hand in hand, Pip reflected with hope, no longer burdened by pride or illusion.